If I go to the boardroom and I say, hey, I need this amount of money to invest in the system, I'm going to be competing with all of the other requests. If I go to the boardroom and I say, hey, I have this is the percentage that I can increase in terms of revenue, or this is the percentage that I can reduce in churn, and I only need this amount of money. It's a completely different conversation. The reality is, technology is coming to disrupt the way we live, the way we do things. However, the human interaction, in my opinion, will never change, or the value of the human interaction. What are your experiences? What is your story? How do I help you? How do I connect with you? If your experience as an employee is not good enough, how are you going to deliver a good experience to a client? There is no way. You become the person you believe you are, not necessarily the person you want to be. If you do not believe in you, Christian, it's going to be harder to have someone else believing in you.
Hey everyone, welcome to First Contact Stories of the Call Center. This is the podcast where we dive deep into inspiring journeys of leaders that shape the call center industry. I'm your host, Christian Montes, and today we have a special guest. We have Camila Ferreira, and she's an award-winning CX leader, global business strategist, who's really been mastering the art of transforming customer experience into strategic revenue growth. Now, Camila, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and share the stage with you and those experiences.
Yeah, we love the beginning of the show, always talking about origin stories, right? How did you get to where you are today? And I know you've had a long career, some really great journeys. So it'd be great to share with our audience, how did you start your career and how did you end up where you are today?
How many hours do we have? I'm just kidding.
We can have several episodes if needed.
Okay, so let me make this long story short. First of all, I'm Brazilian. I am now based in Miami in the US. However, I started my career, I graduated in economics, and for the first 10 years, I worked for finance. I was supporting CFOs. I was kind of preparing reports for the board, for the shareholders. That's exactly what I did. However, deep inside, Christian, I can tell something was missing, that I did not know what it was. But that feeling, okay, I am partnering with other departments, and I have had great mentors throughout my life, and they were always telling me, Cami, you have kind of this commercial, this experience vein. And I was like, what it means, right? But that's exactly what it was me. So after 10 years of my professional life, I decided to take an MBA, and that's when kind of a life changed upside down. Or 180 degrees, if I will, right? So I attended my master MBA and I got in contact with a world that I was not familiar with. First of all, I decided to attend a European school MBA because I really want to get in contact with different cultures. I had this kind of from within, and I was like, no, I've already graduated in economics. I'm very much data driven. I need something to actually complement that. That's exactly what I did. And it was, as I said, right, a life changer. Reasons were many. One is I was in a room with people from many nationalities, from many different countries. Two, I had people that were not necessarily from corporate. And this was mind-blowing to me back then. It was like, Again, 10 years after graduating, I still used to think that corporate problems could only be solved by corporate people. And I can tell you, I was wrong, right? So it started kind of opening my eyes and my mind to see things from a different perspective. That's when CX came to place, because I started paying attention of the experience I was going through and the transformation it was driving in my life. And coincidentally, or at the same time that I took my master, I also kicked off my international career. And so I used to say that I did 2 MBAs at the same time. One was at school, right? And the other one was moving internationally, because it actually pushes you beyond your boundaries, and you're going to learn things that masters won't teach you. That's how how my passion for CX started. This was actually me going through a personal and professional transformation and realizing the power of experience to make things better.
There's so much to unpack there. And one of the things that's really interesting is whenever I talk to guests who have chosen to go from a corporate work life to being their own boss and running their own business, and everyone has their own story of that moment where they say, I could do this, or I could do this better, or, hey, by necessity, I have to do this. Where was that moment where you sat there and said, I'm going to stop working for a company or a corporation and be my own boss? What did that look like? And were there any lessons you learned in that pivot where you'd maybe do it differently, or was it kind of smooth sailing the whole time?
Yeah, no, a couple of things. So one is, since I transitioned into CX, I have had a chance to live in 6 different countries. And I have had the chance to lead and manage people across so many locations, right? So I used to work with global teams, I don't know, for many, many years. And this experience taught me the connections and seeing things that are not necessarily written, hear things that are not necessarily kind of sad, and moreover, kind of grab feelings and experiences and sentiments that are not necessarily expressed, that you can only do in your home country. And why? Because you were born and raised in that culture, so you learned this. So throughout this, 15 years living in so many different countries and working with CX, I realized that this financial mindset was still with me. And that's that's what I believe that differentiates me in the CX role. Because I was not the regular CX leader, or like many CX leaders that start as a frontliner and kind of developed their career. No, it was not my case. As I said, I started in finance, and then kind of after 10 years, I transitioned into operations, into CX, but with the responsibility of designing strategies globally. So I combined those two things, those two roles, which is experience and the financial part of everything that you do. And then I did that in Europe, I did that in Latin America, and I did that in the US. Again, mentors and my network coming. But don't you think you are limited by being in corporate? Why don't you do that on a broader scale? It was like, no, corporate's so safe. So I have my job and I'm raising a family for that. I have a 5-year-old kid. So no, I don't want to trade this. But at the end of the day, with so many people close to me kind of saying the same thing, I start paying attention to that. Like, that's actually true. And especially sharing with my close friends that also work in CX, the challenges they face to have their voices heard, the challenges they face to get their projects approved. Like, I need to go and share it and help them to be more strategic and be more successful at the end of the day. Because many CX leaders get frustrated by not having a seat at the table in the boardroom. And I think I was able to kind of to get there because of this financial mindset. So it was not an easy decision, Kristen, by any means. Like the first one, when I took my MBA, the second one, the third chapter, I would say, of my professional life that I'm just kind of writing as we speak, was mostly based on me and my network supporting that decision of going beyond in supporting CX leaders to take a different approach across organizations. The fact that I'm living here in the US helped significantly because there is a lot of support to entrepreneurs in here in the US, which is completely different than in Brazil. So maybe if I was there, I wouldn't have kind of founded my own company. But the fact that I'm here and I found this support system to kind of push me through or to help me through definitely helped.
It's interesting how culturally the idea of entrepreneurship can be very different, both from the country, but also within your own group, right? Where you're surrounded with friends or your peers or your network. Where do they look at the dynamics of entrepreneurship? And especially from a CX perspective, it's interesting how you were talking about how there are those moments where you feel like you have this initiative that is going to be a material changer in a business. and you don't always get the approvals, or you're fighting for approvals, or you're not able to get certain projects off, and to go and run your own business or to be your own leader in a space where you can find leaders that want to embrace that mindset versus kind of having to force it. But it's interesting how when companies aren't doing well, many times some of the first places they cut is in the CX space, CX staff, client success people, all these different areas. And you were saying earlier that you don't always get a seat at the boardroom table. It's almost like CX is kind of like in this box over here. We need it. We need to check the box, but you're not really part of the team in some companies. It's just something to add into. So when you're thinking about working with companies that are doing CX initiatives, is there anything you do from the consulting side to say, is this worth my time? Are these people just giving lip service that they want to check a CX box, but they're really not going to do anything? Or, these people really understand that it's going to go from the top down in this business to really embrace CX. What is it that you look for and that you find these moments where, maybe they're really not going to do this, or they're all in, let's go?
Absolutely. No, you are so spot on. It highly depends on how they approach me. And I can tell you, it's kind of, it's so different when you are cost oriented or you are revenue oriented. The way you approach your network changes significantly. And when people come to me and say, hey, I need to make it more efficient. Of course, I am kind of, I'm launching my business, I'm growing my business, so I cannot just kind of give away leads. But I think that the fact that I have always focused on revenue generation helped me attract people that are looking for revenue generation. And what do I do, Christian? First of all, what is company's mission? Everything starts from there. And this is one of the mistakes I see people committing of not connecting the dots internally. Oh, I have a CX leader or I have a support department. And as you correctly said, they need to drive more, they need to drive efficient, they need to reduce costs. And why? Because it's not connected to the company's mission. So to me, everything starts with this. What are you trying to achieve in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? Second, give me your financial reports. Again, I still have my financial base, right? Give me your P&L. Where are you struggling the most? Right? Depending on, of course, the tenure of the company. If it's a startup, most of the times they are going after new clients. And they don't pay attention to the clients that they are losing throughout that journey, right? So they are acquiring very fast, but most likely losing at the same pace. If it's a more kind of a well-established company, so most likely you do have a longer lifetime value. However, what are the pillars? What is driving this? And that's from where I start, because once you identify what is the company goal and where they are struggling the most, from a revenue or growth perspective, then you translate this into CX, not the other way around. Unfortunately, most of the time, what happens? CX is a kind of a must-have department because we all have clients and we need to support them, but we either outsource and we disconnect from our culture, or we do not well balance outsourcing with in-house, or we are constantly looking for cost cut and we are not leveraging. Think that support team is the team that has the most touches with clients. No other team has that amount of touches. However, are we leveraging those touches? No. Most of the time, what are we doing? Reacting to what? To a failure. Instead of using this in our favor. So that's how I approach. It highly depends on how my clients approach me, but thankfully they do know, particularly my close network, that I'm very much focused on growth and revenue and expanding the business. And two is I start from mission, P&L, and then how do I connect this with CX initiatives?
Yeah, it's great how you prescribe after you've dove deep into the so what. The bigger picture, right? A lot of times we're trying to prescribe to just symptoms of individual silos of teams and we want to point fingers and say, well, this group isn't doing their part, so that's why the whole is failing. And so you kind of talk about this conversion, right, of turning CX from a service function into really a strategic revenue driver. And I've heard you say revenue. And it's interesting how I don't know very many businesses that can't survive without revenue, right? Growing their revenue and maintaining their revenue. And so your financial background, when you talk about this, sometimes people's faces immediately go, oh, finance, oh, numbers. Like I have a department, I have people that they love that, but I like customers, or I like new sales, or I like operations. How do you align when you get to that boardroom where you say CX normally doesn't have a seat at the table to talk the language of CX, but in a way that the boardroom goes, I get how this goes. So I know you said P&L, but how do you get the business to say, we're going to now make an initiative on this because we have this aha moment? Is it mostly financial, or is it also cultural where they're like, no, our customers are the most important thing ever, and we do everything for our customers?
Yeah, it depends on the company's culture. But I'm going to give you a real example of my past employer. I was originally hired to actually transform support that my previous employer operates in the hospitality industry, right? Where the bar is pretty high. And why? You were dealing with customers absolutely every minute. So if you do not kind of drive good experience, they're going to walk away, right? So the expectation for support is high. And back then, the support team was more of a detractor rather than a promoter. That was what I was originally hired for. There was a huge journey ahead of me to actually transform. How do we start? First of all, what is the mission? Where does this company want to be? Are we looking for expansion? Are we looking for efficiency? Can we do both? Of course we can, but most of the times we prioritize one over the other, right? Okay, it's expansion. So if it's expansion, it must be a top-notch service that will speak for itself. I really want clients to come to this company because of support. Look at the mindset. And that's exactly what I sell when I go to the boardroom. Understanding what is their mission. Okay, you are expanding. Fantastic. I can commit to something in terms of revenue. And this is an important thing, Christian. I am not afraid of taking risks whenever I know that I can deliver that through CX. And throughout this journey, for example, we were transforming support and things were getting better over time, up to a point that I felt confident to leverage support to start asking clients to refer other clients. So instead of limiting myself to just improve support, I went down and spoke with marketing. Say, let's partner here. We do have an internal referral program. I want to have a unique link for my team because I want to make CS, customer support, the largest referral channel in this organization. That's when you start speaking the boardroom, right? Again, what is your target and how much I can contribute? I can make your life easier. I used to say that you give to get. If I go to the boardroom and I say, hey, I need this amount of money to invest in the system, I'm going to be competing with all of the other requests. If I go to the boardroom and I say, hey, I have this is the percentage that I can increase in terms of revenue, or this is the percentage that I can reduce in churn, and I only need this amount of money. It's a completely different conversation. So long story short, what happened is that we became the largest referral channel. And why? Because we not only improved support, but we sustained. So our clients were happy and they start referring to other clients. And why? In that particular industry, that's why it's so important for you to understand the industry that you are part of. In that particular industry of hospitality, support is a differentiator, can be a stronger differentiator. And that's exactly what we did. We not only improved, we became the best support of the industry. And this in turn helped us as a company to have more referrals. So that's what I do. I start from the mission, understanding what keeps them up at night. And then from there, what metrics do we have? What metrics do you look at? Okay, let me kind of go deeper. And the 5 times why. Why this metric is this way? Once, twice, 3 times, and so on and so forth. For me to understand what is the root cause until I connect that metric with things that can be done through CX.
This is James. James is a contact center manager with a passion for philosophy and hiking. As a kid, he made a promise to himself that he would always follow his passion. Today, he ponders on the thought that this promise is probably the best decision he ever made. Today, James loves his job just as much as he loves hiking. So much that he sometimes brings the scent of fresh pine and the tranquility of the mountain streams back to the office with him. With Nobel Biz as his company's provider, James found the necessary peace of mind to finally bridge the gap between his passion and his work. By choosing to partner with the promise-keeping voice and software provider of the industry, contact center technical issues, downtime, and poor customer experience are now a thing of the past. In an industry ruled by uncertainty, Nobel Biz combines balanced pricing with the highest quality, topped off with outstanding support. But above all, Nobel Biz delivers peace of mind to contact center managers and owners. And for the first time, James hit that sweet spot of focus and confidence that is allowing him to take his business to new heights of profitability and success. After all, you know what they say, promises are the uniquely human way of ordering the future. Nobel Biz, the promise keepers of the industry.
It's great how when we look at the numbers side of it, it's not looking at the numbers and then trying to find something from there. You're now searching for the numbers and the information that allows you to paint a story and to be able to see what path needs to be taken so that the next chapter can be written, right? And you're not able to go down that way unless you're only looking at one piece of the equation. So you're looking at it in a much holistic way, which is great. And it's interesting how you talk about how when we look at the vast amount of countries and nationalities and cultures you've worked in, you really focus on building an inclusive team, a high-performing team. So there isn't like one or the other. It's inclusive but not high-performing, or it's high-performing but not inclusive. Is that you're finding a balance between those two is what I understand is one of the drivers here. And so what are some key practices that one has to be able to implement to ensure that you do really have this well-rounded but high-performing group when it comes to driving CX and innovation?
Absolutely. It's the human connection, Christian. And that's exactly what I started learning back in my MBA, that I was kind of realizing corporate problems could be solved by non-corporate people, and combined with my international career. My first international experience was in Colombia 10 years ago. When I shared this with my network, 99% was against it. Like, what are you going to do? Right? Because again, back 10 years ago, we used to receive not so good news about Colombia. I knew Colombia from before, and I had a special connection with Colombia. That's why for me, it was a no-brainer. But when I got there, I started learning what is not written in the books. The culture, right? And I got there as an expat, as a single woman leading a company in a culture that is very male-driven. So as you can imagine, I faced many challenges. And in the beginning, I was taking this personal. I was like, no, it's against me. It's with me. It's not. I was someone different in that culture. I was the one that needs to learn from that culture, not the other way around. And that's how I started building my experience-driven leadership, where connecting with people is what makes the difference. If you try to lead with one-size-fits-all solution, I'm not going to tell you you're not going to be successful because I cannot prove that. However, what has worked for me is connecting individually, understanding your needs and what you are looking for, and moreover, prioritizing my team experience. In that journey that I just mentioned to you of transforming support, I started with the team. Because there is no way you can give something you do not have from within. If your experience as an employee is not good enough, how are you going to deliver a good experience to a client? There is no way. So first was Colombia, then I had another experience in Chile, then I had an opportunity to go to Europe. And for every single country that I have had the chance to live in, I was learning that the same problem, like in my MBA classes, can be solved in different ways. But we're going to put ourselves in our audience shoes and try to see things from their perspective and help them. That's why I believe, again, this is my secret sauce. That's why I believe that the team performs so well. Because there is trust. Once you connect, once you are present. Let me picture something. You could have had something personal and you need to speak to your manager. You knock his door, he asks you to come in, and then at the time you were kind of sharing what's going on in your personal life, he's typing. What is the feeling? You are alone in your problem. You went there to ask for help, and you are actually living with your problems. Let's flip that scenario. You knock the door, you tell your manager that you have something personal to share. Your manager is either busy and he can say, hey, I really want to give you the attention you deserve, but now I also have something urgent. If you tell me it's something urgent, I'm going to stop and I'm going to dedicate time to you. Or I'm all ears. How can I actually help you? Let me feel your pain. So once you create that connection, it's beyond a number of an employee, right? And that's when you start building what? An experience-driven culture, where I care about your experience. And consequently, you're going to care about the experience of others. And you name it. It can be your customer, it can be your peer, it can be your manager, it can be your partner. It doesn't matter. But things need to start from within. What normally happens is that we deliver a script to an analyst and say, hey, you need to follow this. We do not empower this person, right? And then we ask this person to deliver a high CSAT, not necessarily training, not necessarily understanding, not listening. How can I set you up for success? Because my main objective is your success. But your need may be different than others.
Yeah, it's true. And we always talk about know your customer, understand your customer. And a lot of times we forget that we have two customers. We have the internal customer, which is our employees. And then we have our external customer, who's whomever we're selling services and products to. And I think you made a great note earlier that if the internal teams that service your customers aren't happy, they don't understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, whether they're doing it well or not, what does their future look like, it makes it difficult for them to focus on the customer when they themselves have this confusion or distrust with the business or lack of willingness to put everything in because they feel their leadership or management doesn't have their back or they're not all in as well. And so one of the things when we look at a time frame that was very disruptive and for many people very isolating was the pandemic. I know in different parts of the world it affected people differently. And when you were working with clients and working with your business and other things that were going on, how did the pandemic, from your view, get impacted on both the CX experience, how companies were either adopting or not adopting CX, but then conversely, how were the experience of the employees impacted when it came to CX?
Absolutely. I can tell you it was one of the most challenges moment of my professional life, where when everybody was locked at home, I was moving internationally. So just to give you an idea. But from an experience standpoint, we lost the in-person connection. And Christian, we can be here again. Of course, that the pandemic allowed us to be way more connected online. However, the in-person connection is also important. How are we going to read the body language if you're just seeing the face? How are you going to kind of read or feel the people's feelings and sentiments if you are all day long far from them? So I think that throughout the pandemic, we experienced the extremes where people were able to connect way easier because of through Zooms or through online. However, at the same time, those connections were too shallow. And why? There wasn't this in person. In my experience, what happened with me, I took a different role when I was during the pandemic, and I led a team for more than a year from my service room in my apartment. It was really challenging because I haven't had the chance to connect with them, to build trust. I was trying to do this with the tools I had available, but it's not the same. So speaking of CX, I think that once again, we lost this in-person connection at the same time that we unlock the opportunities of connecting in different ways. I don't believe in extremes, Christian. I think that the balance is what makes things better, right? It's not one or the other. The company that I was working for grew significantly because it was a company focused on food delivery. So everybody was locked home, everybody was ordering food, so the growth was exponential. However, in terms of experience, we were not able to improve. It was very transactional. Oh, I am locked at home, I need food, what am I going to do? I'm going to order. Once the pandemic was over is when the challenge actually came into place. Because with so many companies that transitioned into food delivery throughout the pandemic, once that was over and people had the chance to leave home, okay, so how am I going to compete nowadays with the restaurants, with the in-person experience?
Yeah, it's interesting how when we look at the shift, we always focus on that idea of businesses where going virtual remote was like the most disruptive thing they've ever had to deal with because they didn't get to look at it and say, how best do we approach it? It's whatever we have to do, let's go do it. And if it breaks, it breaks. If we need to fix it, we fix it. And there was all this innovation and intensity and teamwork. But when you converted your business, some businesses flourished post-pandemic because from their side, they're like, wow, we have this larger diverse work group we have access to. We have a bigger pool of people of not only globally, but also from a cultural and cost perspective that we can access. There's these efficiencies where sometimes maybe you didn't need to have a physical place to pay for anymore, right? And there was maybe this hybrid environment where you still needed in person. But then there are the businesses you're talking about where that shift now goes back to how do I stay relevant? How do I continue to compete and shift again, looking forward versus reacting? And one of those things that are really being disruptive is AI, right? And it's such a loaded term when we talk about AI because AI is everything from replacing all humans and it's going to do all these magical things to, hey, I just wanted to help a human do this better, faster, more efficiently so that the human part is still there, but they shouldn't be wasting time and effort on things that can be automated in some fashion, and then everything in between. So when you think and see AI in your experience, what are you seeing are the trends around AI? What are use cases where people are doing it well? And are there any places where it's really failing miserably and they're not ready? And why do you believe that is? So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. First of all, I think that in the AI field, things are moving quite fast. I do remember a year ago attending a summit where we were discussing in AI and people was tiptoeing the pool. A year later, it's like adoption. So things are moving quite fast. Where do I think that AI came to stay? In transactional operations, in transactional tasks. And let me give an example of an ATM. I don't know, 30 years ago, we used to go to the bank. to the cashier to withdraw money. When the ATM came to place, it was like, whoa, disruptive technology, right? I'm sure people were discussing about losing jobs and what would happen next, what is the future, and so on and so forth. And ATM is one of thousands of examples that we could discuss here. The reality is technology is coming to disrupt the way we live, the way we do things. However, the human interaction, in my opinion, will never change, or the value of the human interaction. What are your experiences? What is your story? How do I help you? How do I connect with you? So what is working in CX? Definitely the transactional operations. And I see this from a very positive standpoint, particularly for the agents. If you think of them, if you think about their pain points and their experience, they were very much limited on following scripts that were designed or written by someone else, right? So if you think about support agents, they got to follow that script. And this is very limiting and very frustrating. So we are freeing them up from having to follow this because AI can do it. At the same time, if you repurpose yourself, if you start developing other skills to actually leverage the outcome of your connection, that's where you're going to succeed. Okay, that's my opinion. Where AI is kind of not helping at all, I don't have anything top of mind that I can share with you. What I do say, though, is that I'm seeing the expansion of AI into QA for us to grab sentiment and translate sentiment into data to go deeper on the analysis to improve the relationship. So I think AI is very beneficial. However, like any other technology disruption that we have experienced in the past, we got to pay attention. We got to leverage the best of it and repurpose ourselves. That's it. I don't write emails anymore. I don't do presentations anymore because this is not my strength. I'm not a designer. So I do use apps with artificial intelligence to help me with that. However, the content is here. The experience, I lived those experiences. Right? Yeah, so the presentation can be done by AI, but the contribution, it's human.
Yeah, and when I think of, I guess, where AI is failing, it's not so much AI in of itself. It's usually what do you intend to use it for and how do you actually implement it? And a lot of times when we implement things purely because there's a cost savings somewhere, or we believe that it's going to replace an expensive part of our cost as a business, which is humans, a lot of times that mindset doesn't wrap around how do you make sure that where it does replace a human, it makes sense to replace a human versus where does it need to complement a human? And I think you said earlier, a year ago, there was this idea of like, I'm going to dip my toe in the pond of AI. And now it's like, if I don't do it, if I haven't done it, I've been left behind. I am so behind. I'm not up to the standards of the industries I'm working in. And I think the people that are doing it well have a place to test it. They know how to test it. They know what they're trying to measure. And they want to have a specific outcome versus I want AI to check the AI box. And so I would have to imagine that when people go to implement AI, it's not whether or not AI has a place and whether or not it's good or bad. It's about, have you done it in a way that's meaningful to your goals, your outcomes, your culture, and how you want your customers to get? Is it a better outcome for them or is it a worse outcome for them, but it makes you more money? And so with that as kind of the baseline of looking at the trends outside of AI, are there any other trends that you're seeing that you're excited about or you're preparing for or your customers are preparing for?
Yeah, I would mention the QA. I attended a summit last week that it was fully dedicated to QA and how QA is expanding. QA used to be seen as the bad guy of organizations, kind of auditing support or auditing departments. And what they are bringing to the table right now is way more valuable. It's like, let's go deeper on understanding the different experiences that we have throughout this journey. Right? So what is expected whenever we either design a journey or we are part of the journey? We gotta ask ourselves and our clients if this is what they are looking for. And I think that QA is kind of helping us to better understand, particularly on the sentiment side. So I would mention QA and I would mention data analytics. Why data analytics? We are living in a world, Christian, that you have so much data, right? So even with your phone, you get your phone, you're going to give you metrics of how much time, how much screen time, what was the app that you most used. It's insane. So if you look for something in your computer, whenever you open your social media, you're going to start seeing promotion. It's insane, right? It's easy to get lost in that amount of data. So the analytics comes to help you with that. But as you correctly said, first and foremost, you got to know your destination. Otherwise, AI is just a checkbox. QA is just a checkbox. Analytics is just a checkbox. So what do we actually want? Where do I want to be? What is the journey that I want my clients to have that align with their expectations and needs for us to be more successful? Once you understand that, starting from your destination, you work backwards to see, okay, is AI the best solution? It may not be. So following the crowd will not help you in that case. So what is my destination? What makes more sense for my client? What kind of experience I want to give or I want to drive to my clients? And then I'm going to look for solutions, not the other way around.
Yeah, when you say QA, I kind of laugh a little bit because you're so right how QA was always the gotcha, right? I found the few examples that you suck and you're in trouble and now you're a bad employee and let's focus on the negative when, the reality is are my customers and my employees getting the experience that's going to deliver the outcomes we want? Does that employee feel empowered? Do they have the right training? Do they understand what success looks like? Do they understand how they're doing against that? Is the customer getting a frictionless experience? Are they getting the knowledge and all the data that we have of them in anticipation of how to serve them better, faster versus all these barriers and walls of repeat this. I know you, but I don't know you. So now you got to start all over again with telling me who you are and why you want something from me. And balancing that together and saying, how do we do this at scale? How do we do it with the outcome in mind versus the individual? There's more of a focus of how to improve, or if they're not a good fit and you can't help them, how do you get them out of your environment better, faster? Because the longer they're there, it does become cancerous. It does affect, every customer that has a poor experience and you don't know it and you don't have a way to address it. It's going to cause bigger problems for you. And it's really damaging. So I love that. And then data. Oh my gosh. We've talked about data forever. There's never been a lack of data. What's been lacking, like you said, is what data is where and how do I use it to actually do something meaningful in my business in a timely manner versus, that was great 2 months ago, but, it's not relevant now, right? Or people that are focused on just certain metrics, but they don't understand the holistic approach. So I love how you talk about all that stuff. And I think we could probably talk about all these things forever. And I really want to shift slightly to a different avenue. You're busy, you're running a business, you're traveling, you've had a career in a very different areas from the corporate world to finance to CX. But you have to be doing things outside of your professional life that creates either a balance or gets you out and enjoying life alternatively. So what hobbies or activities or what do you do to recharge and unwind?
Absolutely. I got to do it. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So first is, I think I mentioned here, I have a 5-year-old kid, and this is definitely how I recharge. He's very energetic, but I also learn a lot from him. And I love spending time with him and seeing how he's learning, right? So we have 40 years of difference. I learned in Brazil. I was born and raised in Brazil, and he's here in the US. So learning from him and with him is definitely something that recharges me very much. I love traveling as well, not only for work, but also for leisure and working out. So now that I have my own company, one of the tracks that we have to be very much kind of on top of is how to coordinate your agenda. So I set some time to go work out, to take care of my my mind and my body. So, but those three things, I would say my kid, my family, traveling, and definitely working out is what balance things out in my life.
So I've always found this term kind of contradictory, this work-life balance. And I've always heard from people, it's like, sometimes family's priority and you don't have career movement because it requires a certain amount of time or focus away from your family. And you have other people that say, I had a great work-life balance because my company understands the balance culturally of how to balance time with family and also the priority of excellence in the business. And there's other people that say, no, my career is paramount and my family's going to understand that. They're going to know that I invested in the work because the work is what allowed me to do whatever it is that you believe you're doing for your family. So when it comes to being an entrepreneur and finding balance, how do you actually make time or prioritize time? Or is it really not a balance? It is sometimes a seesaw. It is one way extreme and the other.
Yeah. Again, what is the experience? How do you want others to experience you? That's what I have in mind. And it highly depends on how much you want to achieve. Again, when I was in corporate with a busy agenda and traveling for work, I did not have time for my kid. And I realized that he was growing. It's like, I do want it. I got to prioritize this. It has nothing to do with the company because the company was quite flexible. But I also had a job and a role to drive. It was up to me, right? So it's very unique. Christian, think of the following. Think of our phones. Most likely, we both have kind of a similar hardware in regards to phone, right? Independent of which brand you use, but from a technology standpoint, it's most likely the same. If we switch phones, I'm going to get lost with yours and you're going to get lost with mine. And why? Because we tailor to our needs. The technology is pretty much the same. But what we prioritize in life is going to tailor and is going to define what are the apps that we have and how we use our phone. It's exactly the same thing. Everything starts with us. If you put the responsibility of having a kind of a balanced work life on others, that's not going to happen because you're going to set the boundaries. I could make more money leading my company if I was if I was traveling more, if I was not spending as much time with my kid, but that's not my priority. So work-life balance is very unique. And I'm a firm believer that you set the boundaries because if you leave that responsibilities to others, most likely you're going to leave very much frustrated.
Yeah, couldn't agree with that more. Finding what's important to you and understanding how do you manage through that. It's easier said than done, but having the decision and the ability to sit there and say, this is what I want and how do I go get it is a very important step that many just get caught in the mouse and the wheel and it just keeps going and going, right? And until maybe someone else changes it for you. So let me kind of shift a little bit to the fact that you've really traveled a lot around the world and there have to be places that have made a mark on you where you've just said, oh, I love this place. I love the culture or the food or something that just really resonated. And maybe multiple places, but what comes to mind through your travels that's really stayed with you?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I have had a chance to visit so many amazing places. I would say trip-wise, not to live, but a place to visit is the desert between Bolivia and Chile. So there is a desert made of salt. The Spanish name is Salar. My goodness, it's such a unique experience. And you rent a car and you go in the middle of the desert. And I crossed from Bolivia to Chile to Atacama. And this was one of the amazing, the most outstanding experience that I've ever had, is sleeping in a hotel made of salt in the middle of nowhere, going to kind of seeing the stars at night that it was completely dark. There was absolutely no light whatsoever. So again, it's the experience that has stayed with me. This was one of the most unforgettable trips, far from being luxurious. No 5-star hotel, no fancy things, no kind of a Michelin restaurant, but it was the experience. And look at this, right? We talk so much about experience here. That's exactly what stuck with me because it was very unique. So this is trips. Highly encourage people to live that experience. In terms of place to live, I love where I live right now. I live in a very small city here, close to Fort Lauderdale. It's called Weston. Reason why I live here is mostly because of my kid. We have great schools. It's very bikeable. I work from home, but I also have two big airports nearby, so I can travel pretty easily. Again, it depends on your priorities, right? But I can tell you, I have my passion for Colombia. That's where I plan to retire, to be honest with you. I got in love with that country even before living there. As I mentioned, I got to know Colombia before I had my living experience. And I have had my ups and downs when I lived there, but I learned how to be part of that culture. I learned how to understand that culture. And that's why I got so hooked by it. The food, the parties, the language. Again, I love how they speak Spanish, their accent. And yeah, so I would say, and of course, Brazil is always home country. My goodness, I'm listing so many places here. But
well, the good thing is that you have something special from every place that you've been, and you take something with you, which is great. And that's part of our journey, right? Is everywhere we experience something, hopefully there's an impression made on us that these stories and these collections of memories can be passed on and shared with others. And so talking about sharing, I want to end with one thing that's about a book or a personal mantra or something significant that has influenced your life and it really has resonated and been deep in impacting you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to share, I have a tattoo here that states believe. And there is a book called The Secret. It's a notebook that, again, my people that are more close to me say that I'm the personification of The Secret. Because to me, and it has everything to do with this tattoo. You become the person you believe you are, not necessarily the person you want to be. If you do not believe in you, Christian, it's going to be harder to have someone else believing in you. Because we are selling ourselves absolutely every day. From the time we wake up to the time we go to bed, we are negotiating. We are kind of making connections. So if I do not believe in the connection that I'm making, most likely it's not going to be a long-lasting connection, right? So this is the book that really resonates. I have many other books about leadership and so on, but if you ask me and the people kind of closer to me, they're going to say, Cam is the kind of a person that she believes in who she needs to believe in order to make it happen. Even kind of my past experiences at work at a corporate. First thing is, where do I want to be? Do I believe I can get there? Because if I do, it's a matter of time.
It's awesome how passionate you are about it. I mean, all the way to get the tattoo on yourself. And, there's a strong connection between when you really believe and you've made the decision that it is possible. It's now how it gets done versus if it could be done. And I think that mindset is instrumental. So there's going to be people that are going to want to connect with you. They're going to want to find out more about what you're doing, or maybe they just love your personality and the mantra of believe. So how do they best get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So I think the easiest way is through my website, which is riseupbycami.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn as Camila Ferreira.
Awesome. Well, Camila, thank you so much for joining. I love the insights, the journey that you've had, and I hope our listeners also loved what you said. So thank you so much for joining, and we love all the feedback we'll get from people wanting to watch the episode.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you very much for the opportunity.